To our truckers and friends on Parliament Hill, do not give in to fear and threats. Your courage has already exceeded all of our expectations and inspired an international movement. Be strong, show kindness. Love will always defeat hate. Hold the line.
Struck by the fact that only a couple of days ago the province of Ontario issued an emergency order, and now we have only a few days later the anticipation that the federal government is doing that. Was this all planned? Is this all orchestrated to try to heighten heighten the fear in people in Canada, so they think this is all justified? The other thing that's really bothersome to me, not only as a Canadian but as somebody who helped craft the Charter of Rights and Freedoms right here in this city, a little over 40 years ago, which was a constitutional document which is supposed to be able to stand the test of time. And one of the principles of that charter is that if governments initiate any moves to undermine the freedom of a religion, or the freedom of conscience, or the freedom of thought, or the freedom of expression, or the freedom of movement, of association, or assembly, or if they're going to move against life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if they're going to move, or I should say security of the person, if they're going to move to try to restrict travel in the nation from me being able to travel across the nation, or any citizen, or they're going to somehow override one's equality before the law, they have to, even if Section 1 does apply, which I would argue it doesn't, they have to demonstrably justify their actions. That's a pretty strong onus. And in the Oates case back in 1986, a judge of the Supreme Court indicated what a high bar that will be to the governments to be able to meet, to eliminate the individual freedoms and rights of Canadians contained in that charter. So there's a great onus upon the government of Canada when they start initiating these kinds of actions, that they must be consistent with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in all its measures. And remember, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms also says, whereas this country is founded on the principles of the supremacy of God and the rule of law, that this must also come into play. And that the Constitution of this nation, not the Emergency Act, the Constitution of this nation, is the supreme law of Canada. So it's within that context that I, as a citizen, and a person who was involved in the creation of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, must take issue with what I anticipate to be an action against the people of this country through the Emergency Act. This is completely unnecessary to apply to the truckers. And we will, as I said, because I've been informed of this by the trucker leadership, that we will, over the next days and weeks, if this particular declaration moves to the House of Commons and the Senate, that we will actively argue against any such measure being passed by the Parliament of Canada. And we hope that by the end of the day, and that will be 2 or 3 weeks from now, we hope, because we want robust debate and we don't want any closure on this by the Government of Canada, that it will give time for representatives not only of the truckers, but representatives of Canadians from coast to coast to coast to speak about this unilateral, this kind of action that the Government of Canada is taking. You know, killing a fly with a sledgehammer. This is completely and absolutely unnecessary. I'm also very hopeful because I understand that the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada have consulted with both, or at least informed the opposition parties and have informed the provinces of the premiers. I hope before this day is out that this enactment happens by the government, that they'll move ahead on their intention to introduce this Emergency Act, that the premiers will come out and say, as I am saying, that this is completely unnecessary, that they will speak up. Hopefully the members of Parliament before this day is out will speak up. We want to know where every single member stands. No vacillation, no this way, that way, no wiggle room here. We want to hear from all of the members of Parliament and the members of the legislature to right across the country, all 14, where do you stand on all this? And make it clear, because we are at a very historic moment in our history to see this act being invoked for the first time against peaceful demonstration and civil disobedience. So I guess what we're saying is that we're putting the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada on notice. If they move ahead with what we understand from the press is they're going to do later today, is to enact this declaration of emergency and then bring it to the Parliament of Canada, that we will stand strong as we have today to oppose these unnecessary moves against the freedoms and liberties of every Canadian.
A question for Tamara? Or for Brian or Tamara, just a quick question. The protest in Windsor ended pretty peacefully, a few arrests, but mostly people just drove away or walked away. What's happening, could this end the same way as it ended in Windsor? So people just go based on police coming in?
I don't know what happened in Windsor, so I'm not familiar with that. I know it happened in the last few hours or whatever.
Well, they all left pretty peacefully, just a dozen arrests. They walked away, they drove away, and it's all clear now. Could this end the same way it ended there, do you think?
Well, as I understand it, if you're saying to me whether if the police start to move in and then everybody walks away, listen, as the truckers have said, as Tamara has said here today, we are going to hold the line.
Hold the line. Question for Ms. Leach. Today in Coutts, Alberta, the RCMP arrested 11 people who were found having firearms, ammunition, body armor in their trailers at the blockade site. Can you assure people in this community that none of the protesters who are here have firearms in their trucks or vehicles? What's a lie? I'm asking a question. Do they have fire? Does anybody here have firearms in the trucks? No. Yes or no?
As we know it, crime has gone down in this city since the truckers came. So what we're saying
Answer the question. Are there firearms that are in the truck?
Thank you. You see these? Shake this paper.